Well, as I always say, we have the greatest guests in the world of combat sports, the most interesting ones at least. And this week on the Fight Guys with Erik Apple, we are no exception because I have, consultant, matchmaker galore, Rich Chou. Rich, welcome to the show, my brother.
Erik Apple, thank you very much. That was quite the intro. You just made my day with that.
Yeah, matchmaker galore. That's a pretty good one.
Yeah,
Tell me.
I like that one.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
we
you
have
spending
made
the
some
time with
matches
us.
over the years.
I appreciate you spending the time with us here. Uh, I know that most people probably know you as a matchmaker, but you kind of disappeared as far as publicly from the scene in MMA and combat sports. But you're a consultant now, aren't you?
I do a couple different things. You're right. I made a pivot away from matchmaking, from the promoting side, and started doing a couple other things. The day job is running North America for a listed tech startup called MMA.inc.
Yep.
And doing some consulting work on the side, some stuff you and I have talked about before, helping fighters, brands, a lot of the stuff you do. I've learned a lot from you over the years too.
It's very, very kind of you. Now, tell everybody what exactly MMA Inc. and kind of how big their footprint really is, because they're involved in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we do a lot, and I always am challenged with trying to narrow it down. The elevator pitch, right, so to speak. But as I mentioned, we are a listed tech startup. So as you can imagine, technology, software, different things like that we're trying to be innovative in the space. Now, I think what makes us different is we focus a lot on the growth of gyms, like our thing, or what we started off with. Our core passion is training and supporting gyms and getting people into gyms. So building technology platforms around all that, helping people find the right gym, helping gyms operate better, and just really supporting that whole side of the whole sport that, to be honest, no one really pushes as much. If you notice, everyone wants to talk about fights and fighters because that's the most exciting and the biggest part of it all. But rarely am I hearing as much, hey, you should go and actually train this stuff. It'll change your life, as you and I know.
Yeah, it's so. Would you say that MMA Inc.'s success is directly related to how successful the sport is in general, and how many people partake in mixed martial arts?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So every time I see the sport growing, I see like a new part of the world opening up, starting to love MMA, more promoters, more fighters. And that's the thing that's fun to be on the side of. Like, I've always been a fan first, so it's not like I've only rooted for the companies I've worked with, but now, you just kind of really root for everyone. I root for every fighter, every promotion, every gym owner, and that part of it is pretty fun.
Well, since we're talking about it, I wasn't planning on asking something like this, but let's talk about it. I mean, where are we seeing the growth of the sport, both nationally and internationally?
I think there's a lot more growth overseas. I think the international scene is really strong. I mean, it's been here and been really rooted and driven by the success here in the States for a very long time. But I'm seeing that there's a lot more opportunity out there, and that's where the future of the sport is headed. Because I wouldn't say we've maxed out here, but this has been the place for the sport for a very long time, and I'm happy to see it grow. And you're seeing the UFC, obviously they're the biggest promoter in MMA and probably all of combat sports, but they're not everywhere. There are certain markets that they're not serving or active in. And I think, it's good for other people to be growing there.
Tell me this. This is another thing kind of just came out of left field in my mind. It must be fun for you to be involved in the sport and not be having to compete against the biggest promoter, UFC, because for so many years it seems like you were on board with every promotion against the big dog, and it just is an uphill battle constantly. What a relief it must be to just do your own thing and not have to fight them.
Oh man, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, let's go back to, back in the Rumble days, it really wasn't competitive, right? We were still really regional, Hawaii based. We were doing some cool things. But then when I went from there to EliteXC, then all of a sudden it turned into like, all right, Now you're on on their radar. Now you're competing with them directly, and yeah, they're going to come at you. And then I went from that to Strikeforce. Obviously, we know how that ended. And then from that to Bellator. So you're right. A majority of my time spent promoting and being a matchmaker. Yeah, we're competing with the UFC and worried about, what they're doing to us to compete, keeping an eye on their business. And now you're right. We're riding the wave that they're creating. I root for them every day to keep growing, getting bigger, and getting more people interested in the sport, so we can hopefully connect with them and get them to train and just become a better fan, if that makes sense.
I mean, the UFC is just such a juggernaut, not just in combat sports, but in the world of sports in general. I mean, it's just such an uphill battle that you had to deal with for so long, and I respect you so much for sticking to it as long. Let's go back to the beginning. So Rumble on the Rock, that wasn't like much competition for the UFC. Also in those days, the sport was still in its infancy. Nobody was mad at each other, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. If anything, we didn't have to worry about the UFC. Dana was very supportive. We had to worry about, Super Brawl and Icon. We had a really good rivalry there on that tiny little island. And that's right around the time when you and I met, taking it all the way back over 20 years ago on that beautiful little crazy island.
Yeah, for sure. So once you guys went from Rumble on the Rock to the point where you were running, I mean, I think JD was a head matchmaker and you were working below him in EliteXC. Is that how it worked?
We were all just working together just to get the job done. There was so much work to be done. There was, we would just split things up, and there was other guys that came in as well later. Jeremy Lappin, JT Steele, obviously Gary's son, Scala, and it goes by Jared now, but back then,
did I tell you that I spent the weekend with him at Coachella Festival one year? Just randomly ended up in a group with him, and he was super cool.
Dude, he's great. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I think
super nice
there's
guy.
A misconception. He projected a certain image, I think, that he felt was necessary that really wasn't him, and people got on him for it. But yeah, I love that guy. He's got a good heart, and it was a good crew. We were in the trenches. That was our big, me and JD, that was our big moment to step up and go from, Rumble on the Rock to like promoting a national and in many ways international brand. That was like a taste. That was like the big break that we had been working towards, because JD always had big vision. Him. He was always thinking big, and having BJ as your little brother and being involved with his career, it's easy to do that, right? When you got the best fighter in the world at that time, you're like, man, we can do anything. Yep. And that was really the belief.
Tell me about that switchover when you went to EliteXC, because I mean, EliteXC, that's where we first saw guys like Kimbo, and we saw, I think, did Ken fight him in that show? So you really went from like a local show with pretty big MMA names to, CBS and national news.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what that big leap was. We had been, fortunate to work with some big name guys, like you said, but we were always bringing them to Hawaii and promoting out of the Blaze. Though now you're like, all right, now we're going to launch on Showtime, and then we're going to launch on CBS, and now you're in big arenas, and just everything went. And we went big overnight, and it was a big learning curve, a bit of an adjustment period. I mean, I was excited. We learned a lot. And at that time, I'm in my mid-20s. Like, holy shit, we're doing it. Like, this is crazy. Because we would talk about it a lot. JD and I and some of the crew, we would always talk about what we wanted to do, and man, wouldn't it be cool to do this and that? And we were just so lucky to actually get that chance to do it.
Was it surreal? Like, literally, you were putting on the matches and you were dealing with the fighters and signing the fighters, negotiating with the fighters, these guys that were fighting on network television, which was the first time that it happened in America. It must have been surreal.
Oh yeah, it absolutely was surreal. Even when I look back on it now, and as we're talking about it, it still just feels like a whole lifetime ago that, man, I was lucky enough to do that. I'm just like this super fan kid who loved to train and be around it. And I got a chance to be able to do all that. But yeah, it was really surreal. And that was like the best learning experience I could ever have, to just be thrown into that. We made a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of people involved. When people look back on it, there's a lot to poke holes in, at that whole operation. But at the end of the day,
tell me one.
We did do a lot of good things. There'll be people that say because I think when you mention EliteXC, people will, the first thing they'll say is, "Oh, Kimbo,"
yeah,
in a bad way, and I'm like, dude, that was
awesome.
That was so fun. Yeah, that was
he
great.
got so much attention, but you said you made a lot of mistakes. I mean, tell me one that sticks out in your mind that you wish you could have done. You could have addressed that situation differently.
Well, there's certain things that perhaps I'll say those mistakes were kind of made but we may not have had a choice. Yeah. Like we knew Kimbo wasn't, the best fighter in the world. I think everyone knew that at a certain point, but we had to keep, pushing him, because that's what the fans wanted. That's what the network wanted. That's what everybody wanted. They wanted that show, right?
Yeah.
And so there were people that felt like, man, you guys are building this whole thing around, it's like this house of cards that'll come crumbling down one day. But that's what everyone wanted. Like, we almost didn't have a choice. Go ahead.
It might be a weird comparison, but it reminds me of Jake Paul, because Jake Paul's not the greatest fighter in the world, but they're promoting him correctly. They're giving him the right opponents, and it's making everyone a lot of money.
You're absolutely right. That's the modern day, because Jake Paul, YouTube guy, right?
Yeah.
YouTube sensation. He's like, you're right.
Kimbo.
You're absolutely right. It's the exact, same situation. Now, good on Jake for stepping up and taking this fight with Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, holy
I mean, listen, the other fights all made a ton of sense to me. They were all very winnable fights, even the one that he lost to Tyson Fury's little brother. But I don't know about this one. I'm sorry to turn this the other way around, but how's this going to work out for him?
Hey, now we're saying he's crazy and he's out of his mind. And before we were saying he's ducking everyone. I guess the guy just can't win. Sometimes you're in that situation, but no, that is a really great comparison. Jake is a modern day Kimbo.
Yeah.
And because just like Kimbo, he came out and it was spectacular, right? Like, knocking these dudes out. Kimbo was how gnarly was Kimbo?
He was bigger than life. He was bigger than
those
life.
Backyard.
It didn't seem real.
Fights that were. No. I remember meeting those guys for the first time, and to this day, still really close with Icy Mike, and we always talk about those great memories we had with Kimbo, and that's why when people talk about it in a negative way, I'm like, man, what are you talking about? It was a lot of fun, because UFC turns around and signs him after criticizing us for
after Dana said he's a joke and he'll never fight the UFC. They brought him in to fight
promoting him so hard. Yeah, they sign him and put him on tough, and of course they had to. Why not? He was always must-watch TV, and I never minded supporting a good guy, man. He was an amazing guy, and I just didn't see, really the negative aspect of it. But to answer your question earlier, that, that's the automatic connection, because he was the face of it all, right? It's like, oh yeah, he lost to Petrozelli and the whole thing blew up. I'm like, yeah, well, we almost had to keep going in that direction.
And Seth is he was kind of a underappreciated guy. I remember he had like some kind of full contact karate background. He actually had pretty decent striking that people weren't aware of. I remember when he fought in King of the Cage years before, when I was commentating there.
He's a real fighter. You're absolutely right. He's a real fighter. And if you remember, he was fighting someone else that night on the undercard. So when Ken pulls out the day of, we're scrambling to find him somebody he can fight. And Petrozelli was supposed to be fighting Aaron Rosa on the prelims. So we had
Rosa.
Yeah, remember that name?
Yeah, I do. What, are you allowed to talk about it?
What you fought on?
Yeah. Are you allowed to talk about it with Ken? I mean, did Ken really injure himself or pull out because of money in the back in backstage?
I mean, there was an issue about money, but I can't say, I can neither confirm nor deny what happened. I mean,
But he
that
was
remains
asking
one
for
of
more
the,
money.
there was a clause in the contract that presented an argument that we engaged with his management team on and debated it. But I can't say, because some people feel very strongly one way or another. Um, I can't say for with all certainty that Ken sabotaged himself. You know,
I mean, because
I was on. I was on.
did he walk away with nothing?
Yeah,
He got no show money, no
nothing,
nothing.
nothing.
Yeah, so it'd be hard to think that somebody would complete, like you said, sabotage himself and walk away and get nothing at all for all that promotion. Like, well, that's pretty dumb too.
No sponsorship money. Remember how good it was back then. Now
Oh
you're talking
yeah,
CBS. It was
he was
on. It
probably
was
making
on.
150 grand in sponsorship money.
It was on track to become the most watched fight in the history of the sport at that time. So yeah, if you look at all the money he left on the table, and then knowing Ken, um, having done business with him after that, it just remains one of the crazy mysteries in this
Yeah.
sport.
Okay, well let's move forward from that. That was a nice topic, and I love the information. After that, you worked with Strikeforce, and we worked at Bellator, obviously with the great Scott Coker, who we both know and love. Is that some of the most enjoyable times you had in the sport? Would you say, or as far as the most comfortable because you just felt content working with Scott?
Yeah, yeah, I was learning a lot. I've always been blessed to be around these guys that were great mentors, to be able to go, working with JD, to then go into work with Coker, and they're chill guys, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, Big vision. Again, I said earlier, JD always had big vision. He always was thinking big, just like Scott, man. So I was very lucky to be around guys like that always, we'd come up with these crazy ideas, and the best part was we'd actually be able to pull them off. And
That's the coolest part.
and yeah, yes, for sure. And working with Scott, learned a lot. It was just absolutely crazy because Strikeforce, you remember those days? You were a big part of it.
It was right there. I mean, I was a part of it with Rockstar and Militia, and I fought. But I mean, there was a point where Strikeforce was right there, and people were making the argument that the Strikeforce champions were better than the UFC champions, and many Strikeforce champions got rolled into the UFC after the purchase or the acquisition, and they became the champions.
You're absolutely right. And you were there a lot, because I remember if you weren't fighting, you were there, supporting the events through Rockstar and Metal Militia. So you were at a lot of these events, and you really saw, how we were growing with just a handful of people. I mean, the old joke was like, Coker, as you know, likes to work out of the bagel shop in downtown Willow Glen. And there's really like 5 or 6 of us core employees. And here we were battling, it was David versus Goliath. We just got on a roll, and I like to joke and say this, we became a victim of our own success. We did too good of a job, and the UFC had to take us out. So
yeah. Well, shout out to JD Penn and Scott Coker, 2 of our favorite guys. We love those guys, and they did so much for the sport. And I think you and I are fortunate that we got to be there at the same time as it and give our little contributions ourselves, right?
Absolutely. I look at that core group of us that were there. Like I said, you were always there with us on the road all the time. You were part of the family, part of the crew. So you saw us, and yeah, we just, hopefully when it's all said and done, the work we did will have been meaningful.
I mean, to me, the Strikeforce days before it got acquired, that to me was the best time I ever had in the sport of MMA. We were having fights in St. Louis, San Diego, San Jose. We had great venues. We had the great crew. We had great fighters. Sponsors were rolling. I was spending money with Militia and Rockstar, and that was the best time I ever had in the sport. Plus, I got to fight a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. It felt like that was like the golden era, right?
Yeah.
And then things got really big. And I think what's interesting and almost ironic about it, and you've probably seen this in other industries, especially in action sports, but when things start to get really, really big and it starts to get corporate, right? Everything changed.
Yeah.
And I have the same conversation with so many guys. Like, man, that was so fun. That was the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I like these days again how the sport is so damn big. It just feels different though, and I'm sure everyone can say that. I'm sure even Dana would say that. Like, this isn't. It's great to be so big, making all this money. But there was something about that time, like the Wild Wild West. There was no corporate ownership. There was no uniforms. It was crazy.
Okay, I got one more, Rich. This is going to come out of left field. The underground, the other ground guys, they're all mad at you. It's so funny because I laugh and I hear the guys in the forum. They think they blame you for the collapse of their forum. Tell them what you want to tell them. Because if I don't ask you this, I'm going to hear it.
You know, I guess I should wear it with some type of like a badge of honor. Might as well, right? They're all killing me for it. They've harassed me online. I'm part of a big publicly traded company. I don't make all the decisions. I really loved that place and was the guy who made the connection, to make the partnership happen. So this certainly isn't what the vision was for it. But man, I also got to say, Apple, when we got in there, things needed to change. Things needed to be cleaned up. It was way gnarlier. I got to admit, man, we collectively as a group of OG UGers just kind of lost touch with what it turned into. It was like, this has nothing to do with fighting. This is all funny. Like really gnarly stuff. But
name me another sport in the world where there was a forum that existed with such a high percentage of the athletes from that sport were actually on there chatting or arguing back and forth with the guys. It doesn't exist in any other sport, and that's what made it so cool back in the day.
You're absolutely right. When I look through the archive, in the early days, it's been a few years now, but when we look through the archive, fights were being made on there. You had Dana on there all the time. Yeah. Joe Rogan was on there all the time. It was the place for our sport to grow. And what's interesting, Apple, is like, to me, MMA is, at that time, it was like the first sport after the internet, right?
Yeah.
And it lived and breathed on that site, and it grew on it. And just as social media came and all these other things came, technology came, the place kind of changed and the world changed really. And it became less about fight conversations in there.
Yeah.
And then more about some other things that I don't really care to talk about that are a little dark. But you can't deny, as you said, like the roots of
the sport are on there.
Sport live on there. And that's what we're trying to focus on and celebrate. And that's why this cleanup needed to be necessary. So we're definitely not giving up on it. We're making some major renovations. And we look to bring it back soon with a whole new look and feel, and hopefully those guys that were bummed at us are going to come back and give it another shot, because if you're a real fan, I think you'll like it, and if you want to talk about some other stuff, then it might be not the place for you. So.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to sign off, Rich. I appreciate you doing this on last second notice. You are my man. I love you, bud. I appreciate you. Shout out to Scott Coker and JD Penn, the whole Penn family. Those guys helped us a lot. We appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for watching The Fight Guys at Erik Apple. We'll be back next week with another very interesting guest like our man Rich Chou.